In this lecture segment, we are talking about early medieval art in the British Isles. We will focus on an object from a burial and two manuscripts. We are pivoting this week from talking about the art of Islam and Byzantium to Western Europe, where we will be for much of the rest of the course. We are picking up our story here at the collapse of the western portion of the Roman Empire in 476 CE, which was really a dissolving of bureaucratic or administrative control. As we've talked about, this collapse was not startling and sudden, but gradual, as Romano-Germanic tribes that you see on this map assumed control from the empire and filled power vacuums, establishing their own administrative systems and basing their creation of art and architecture on a combination of local traditions and Roman precedents. And keep in mind that the church based out of Rome does survive and will be a powerful entity throughout the medieval period. In this chunk of our medieval discussion, we're heading to Britain to talk about hybrid works of art that show this intriguing merging of cultures, the Roman with Christian and local traditions. In this map, we see multiple cultures that have gradually migrated into these territories: Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, Germanic tribes from northern Europe who gradually moved into Britain and mixed with the local populations that had been part of the Roman Empire. So two terms we use to refer to works of art from this time show that cultural merging: Anglo-Saxon or Angles and Saxons, and Hiberno-Saxon, Irish and Saxon. To help you place what we are going to look at in context, you might think about these works of art as related to the Arthurian legends, the Knights of the Round Table, and Beowulf. And we, gratefully, have a wonderful collection of objects that visualize this cultural hybridity. They come from the Sutton Hoo burial, found here in a burial mound, where a 90-foot boat was buried along with the deceased and grave goods. And these goods did not just include objects made in this area, but objects from all over the territory previously held by the Romans, including a Byzantine bowl and a purse filled with a collection of coins of different types of currency from all over Europe and the Mediterranean, carefully chosen for inclusion in the burial. We learn from this how very interconnected these kingdoms were at this time, and how much significant interchange there was between these cultures. You can see a couple of the objects here: the cover of a purse that held the coins, and a belt buckle, clearly expensive objects produced using a high degree of specialized craftsmanship. We are focusing on a hinged clasp from the burial that could have been used at the shoulder to secure the armor of, presumably, a chieftain. It is just 5 inches long and is an exquisite object made of gold with inset decoration. The preciousness of this object likely indicates that it was intended to be a status symbol, expressive of the power of the leader buried at the site. It also gives us good clues indicating that we are dealing with a socially stratified culture in which warriors wield the most power. If we look carefully at this object, we can develop an understanding of what art was like at this place at this time, what the typical style, media and techniques, and iconography were. The gold is used to create little chambers or compartments to hold slices of garnet, a bright red semi-precious stone. And then other chambers are filled with slices of glass, a technique called millefiori, in which the artist takes several long, thin rods of different colors of glass and melts them together, just enough to make a pattern, and then cut thin slices of them to fill in the compartments. Filling the shapes made by the gold separators with glass, enamel, or stone is called cloisonné. So cloisonné objects are a type of object we would associate with this place and time. If we look at the style, we have intricate patterning in the millefiori compartments, but also in the borders along the edges and the rounded ends of each half of the clasp. We see interlace, or the interwoven repeated forms that seem to go over and under in the decorative areas. We see animals from nature, including snakes and boars, that likely spoke to the characteristics of the leader buried. They are highly stylized, but still recognizable, even with their transformation into interlace. We have a pretty good idea how art looked and what iconography we often see in art from this area at this time. We also see the leftovers of Roman influence, as these shoulder clasps are similar to the type of clasp Augustus was wearing with his leather body armor in the Augustus of Prima Porta. One part goes over the front, one over the back, and a pin through the hinge connects the clasp, securing the armor. So we have a hybrid object that shows us local traditions of craftsmanship with local style and iconography used to decorate an object that resembles and functioned as an element of Roman military dress. It speaks a local stylistic and iconographic language that shows the international origins of the people who lived in this area, and also refers to the previously held Roman control over portions of Britain. Let's look at another adaptation of this local style and technique, but this time used in a Christian context. Remember that the Christian church survives the collapse of the Western Roman Empire and helps to bring some unity to the varied kingdoms. The church extends its influence throughout Europe, attracting converts, building churches, and furnishing them. And one of the types of objects needed are manuscripts, which are handwritten books. Here you see a page from an early gospel book, a manuscript that included the 4 Gospels by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This is the page showing the evangelist symbol of Matthew, an angel or a man. It was made in England or Northern Ireland. It does not look much like a human, but by thinking about this page within the context of art made in this area, it makes much more sense. If we compare it to the Sutton Hoo shoulder clasp, we can see that the monk who created this image based his style on metalwork objects like the shoulder clasp, as if the bell-shaped figure of Matthew is made up of little compartments filled with color, with the addition of a frontal, large-eyed face and a couple of tacked-on feet. Like we saw with early Christian objects, artists based their creations for a new religion in the visual traditions of the old, in essence making them speak local to take the new and unfamiliar and make it seem comfortable and familiar through style, medium or technique, and sometimes iconography. Our last example for this lecture was made at Iona in Scotland, here. But today it's the national treasure of Ireland, the Book of Kells. It is a manuscript, so a handwritten book on parchment, which means the pages are made of animal skin that is carefully prepared for text and images. This manuscript was written on vellum pages, so parchment made of calf skin. It is a gospel book with the texts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Both images of it you see here are facsimiles for scale. The original is kept in a vault. The surviving book has been cut down or trimmed, so it originally would have been bigger than the copies you see. The Book of Kells was made in a scriptorium, or a room in a monastery dedicated to the copying of manuscripts. Books like this were incredibly expensive. 185 calves were killed just to make the pages. And pigments were used that came from Afghanistan. With its size and its materials, we clearly are dealing with a precious object that would have taken a team of artists and scribes to create. It could have been carried in processions, kept at the altar at a church as a living embodiment of the Word of God. Most pages within the text look like this, mostly Latin text with some small decorative elements. But others in the manuscript look like this, full-page illuminations or illustrations or images in the text. This page shows the evangelist symbols. We can already recognize Matthew's, the angel or man, but we also have the symbols for Mark, Luke, and John as well. So angel, lion, ox, eagle. We see a trend throughout the text to make Christian figures and ideas look familiar, to speak the local visual language. Here, for example, is a depiction of the Virgin and Child, and a depiction of Christ looking pretty Irish, especially Christ with his ginger hair. And if we're reading through the text, we'd get to a page like this, just small illuminations with Latin text, and then we'd turn the page and find this stunning page that highlights an incredibly important moment in this gospel book, a full-page illumination that probably would have taken one artist a month of full-time, sun-up, sundown work to create. This page is placed at the moment in the book of Matthew, when he is reviewing the ancestry of Christ, and then gets to the end of Matthew chapter 1, verse 17, flips the page to verse 18, which says, "Now the birth of Christ was on this wise," meaning that Christ has come into being. He exists in mortal form, which in Latin is Christi autum generatio. Christ has been generated. The whole point of a gospel book is to testify of Christ and talk about his essential role in salvation. And this page gives that significant moment of Christ's existence so much attention. It's called the Chi Rho Iota page and shows us the monogram of Christ. Remember Justinian at San Vitale and Constantine? The Chi, which is the X, and the Rho looks like a P, and the iota, the I. And then right down here, you see this that looks like an H, which would be the abbreviation for autumn, and then generatio right here. The page is covered in huge Latin letters, the language of the Roman Empire, but they are depicted according to the prevailing traditions in art making in this area and time. We see the interlace that we saw with the shoulder clasp from Sutton Hoo used here to create a page filled with color and pattern, and we have to hunt like Where's Waldo for the iconography. The chi rho iota, as well as other elements, the head of a monk or Christ, this floating red head, cats and mice potentially fighting over the wafer or the Eucharist. As you also see here, an animal eating a fish that could relate to the name of Christ. So the artists took their local stylistic language and merged it with this important moment in Christianity and Christian iconography, creating a hybrid work that speaks to the local context and the Christian context.